Former missing persons. What's your story? Serious. My biological mother lost custody of myself and my siblings, so she decided to move to the USA in secret, forging the necessary paperwork to get us out of Europe. That was 2001. She proceeded to raise us in the lie that our father had abandoned us, and that he was a hateful monster. I was on the missing persons list until a private investigator on my father's $ found us. So much more to the story. Missing officially for 8 years. I was abducted from a shopping cart while my mother was shopping. I was probably 2 months old at the time. My mother went to grab something off of the shelf, and when she turned around I was gone. Of course I don't remember it since I was pretty young, but my mother said it was a pretty scary moment. Once she saw that I was missing, she ran up to the checkout lane to report that her child had been abducted. Luckily, someone knew something was up when they seen a female VA patient walking out with a baby and was able to chase her out the door and get the make of the vehicle she got into. After about 5 minutes the police caught up with her and got me back. She's still around town, and every time we see her, my parents always joke about how she's actually my real mother and they were the ones who kidnapped me. Buttholes. I don't know if this counts as missing person. Police were looking for me, but it was for less than 3 days. When I was about 14, I started suffering from really terrible hallucinations, partly because of a bad reaction to new medication I was taking, and was suddenly and unexplainably terrified of every single human being near me. I'd suffered from anxiety for years, and I think this just amplified it. The only logical explanation my brain came up with was to go to a place where I thought I'd be safe, which was this little rocky ledge overlooking a hill in a nature reserve near my home that I used to go to as a kid. My memory is so foggy because I'm pretty sure I was having a complete nervous breakdown. I was smart enough to take my school backpack with me, which had my water bottle in it by the time they found me. Luckily my parents remembered my special place and checked it. I was severely dehydrated and hungrier than I've ever been. My parents were so embarrassed, they kept me in hospital for a week and said it was flu. My mom brings this one up all the time when she feels like making me feel bad. It hardly snows where I live, so when it does, it's kind of a big deal. I was 12 and so excited that we got about a foot of snow the past night. School was cancelled. I remember playing in it all morning, then thinking how I must try out my bright blue sled later with a friend on the hill nearby. We lived in a very quiet country neighborhood with little traffic. After calling my friend, I grabbed my trusty plastic sled and trudge out into the winter wonderland. It takes about 10 minutes to get to her house and we eagerly head to the hill. It's so awesome and we have fun for hours. After I was completely soaked through my garments and cheeks frozen, I decided to make my way home. In such a state of ecstasy from the fun I'd had, I hurry onward. I start walking up our drive and the snow is trashed. There are tire marks everywhere and all the ice is broken in the pool. What the heck happened while I was gone? I sure hope everyone was okay. Well, turns out I didn't tell anyone where I was going. My parents and older brother had no idea where I had gone. They called the police and the fire department. They broke the ice in the pool thinking I had gone through the ice and died, and according to my mother they also had sent dogs trying to find me. They were pretty mad. I think the oddest thing in this story is that you say it doesn't snow often, but you own a sled. So, when I went on vacation to Portugal, my family got small villa. There was a 24-hour restaurant that served breakfast, lunch, and dinner, along with snacks throughout the day. This is where it gets interesting. During dinner one night, my 8-year-old mind decided it was a good idea to go exploring throughout the area. After about an hour of exploring I got sort of lost, but I knew the general area where I was. Another hour passed and that is when my parents probably realized that something was off and decided to tell one of the waiters. Within 10 minutes the entire resort staff was looking for me. By now I'm getting bored, so I decide to start heading back. But that's when the police arrived. I was for some reason terrified of the police, even though I grew up in a safe neighborhood without much crime. So back to the police showing up, I make a break for it to the one place I thought was safe, the villa we stayed in. I hid in the closet and didn't move for what had to have been another hour. By now it is around midnight and my parents returned to the room. My mom was sobbing, and my dad was trying to comfort her. I hop out of the closet, and that was my 5 or 6 hours I spent missing in Portugal. TLDR. My stupidity caused me to be missing for an evening while in Portugal on vacation. Oh my god, the mental image of this is amazing. A few days before my 18th birthday I was doing a college course in media, and to learn a few extra things I decided to enroll in a night class about Photoshop. I'm certain, and this is open to debate in my family, that I told them I would be attending this course and wouldn't be home at the usual time of 5 PM. To compound matters, my phone died halfway through the day. By the end of the day at 9 PM I'm walking down the stairs towards the exit of the college when I see 2 police officers walk in and start pointing at me. My first thought is crap, what have I done when they call my name? I know it's me they want. I go over to them when they tell me that I'm a missing person and that there is a massive police search for me. It turns out that because I'm deaf hard of hearing, I am considered a vulnerable person, which made the search more immediate. My parents arrive shortly after the police contact them to tell them I'm safe and sound. There's big hugs and the usual questions, and when my parents got me home, my nan had just got off the phone to what I assume was a liaison officer who wanted my parents to do a TV appeal. I'm still adamant that I told them, although we don't talk about it too much as it put them through a lot of stress. Where the frick do you live where they're doing TV appeals after 4 hours? My parents lost me in an amusement park when I was 7. They had given me $20 to play a game and wanted me to give them the change when I was done. I still don't know what exactly caused me to become lost, but when I walked back my parents were gone. Now I loved my parents and all, but I was quite thrilled at being alone as I was a strangely independent child. I proceeded to blow all the money and have the greatest hour of my life. Eventually I ran into my parents who had contacted the park security and were searching for me. Hugs and anger followed. Still the greatest memory of my childhood. It was quite surreal. This is my story from a family visit to Disney World when I was 5 years old. We were at Magic Kingdom about to watch the parade. I wanted to have a better look during the parade, so I climbed a nearby tree. I enjoyed a great vantage point for the 1-2 hour long show. Following the parade, I calmly climbed down the tree and walked towards my parents and said with a smile on my face, "Wow, that was so fun." They were not happy. Unbeknownst to me, my parents had no idea I was up there that whole time. They were apparently freaking out because they could not find me and they thought I had been kidnapped. They had notified security, who shut down the entire park. No one was allowed in or out until they found me. That whole time I had no idea every employee and security personnel in the entire park had been looking for me. I was just like, yup, I was in the tree the entire time. Fun fact, no one has ever been kidnapped from a Disney park. Now I can see why. Obligatory, not me, but my mom. She ran away from her family at 13 with her first boyfriend, and they lied their way onto a plane from Miami to Cali. She was missing for 3 weeks. They lived under a hotel where the hotel stored beach chairs and such, with some people. Then went to the mountains and lived in a commune. Then tried to hitchhike to San Fran and got pulled over by state cops. She had an old report card in her wallet that had Miami-Dade printed on the top, so they immediately brought her in. I didn't necessarily believe until it came up with my grandma, and she pulled out the posters. But they weren't missing posters. It had her picture, build, and description, but instead of missing it said wanted with a reward of $500. This was in 1967, I believe. Your mom sounds like a badass. In 7th grade I overslept my alarm and my mom thought I went to school. So later in the day around 8ish the school calls my home telling that I was not at school. Since my mom thought I was at school, she starts freaking out, and apparently there was a whole school-wide report on trying to find my whereabouts. I eventually get out of bed and realize that I'm wicked late, so I run to school and kinda unique my way into class during the bells. The teacher comes in kinda frantic and asks has anyone had any contact with new username, and then she makes eye contact with me and was like, go to the office. Then everything got sorted out after that. My friends still occasionally joke about it and they made a FB page for me about the subject. My mom lost my little sister at the airport in Orlando, Florida once. Or, more accurately, my sister lost us at the airport. We were taking an elevator up 2 floors for whatever reason. We had to get someplace. My sister thought it'd be faster to take the escalator. Before my mom had a chance to stop her, she had darted out of the closing elevator, was just gone. We spent nearly 6 hours in the airport looking for her. The entire time, my mom held my hand so hard it was bruised at the end of the day. Turns out what happened was my sister went up 1 floor instead of 2, and instead of going up to the front desk, which was right in front of the escalator, or waiting at the top of the escalator, she panicked and ran off. We eventually found her when she finally found a security guard and had the pagers to their office on the other side of the airport. Needless to say, our Disney World vacation got off to a less than magical start. And this is why some kids are put on a leash. I was missing for 3 days out on the open water. I was boating with my father and we were in a small boat. We had all sorts of supplies, knives, life jackets, fishing rods, flares, cooking utensils and materials, all the stuff. Anyways, we were both in this one boat. We were at a dock, but we didn't tie the boat to the dock, which was a dumb idea. I was told to hold on to the dock so I don't flow away. I held on, but there were somewhat strong currents and it was kind of windy. I let go. I didn't mean to. I had to. I didn't know how to swim at this time, but I started to float away. I couldn't jump out because I would most likely drown, and I was out of sight. I panicked and just hoped for the best. If we didn't have the materials and the boat, I probably would have died. Anyways, I floated away and eventually I was out of sight from the land. It was very scary. I closed my eyes and just hoped to God I would survive. I prayed and am an atheist. I wanted all the luck I could get. I kept hydrated with the bottled water we had on board, and we had some dried nuts and fruits on board too. I had a thermal blanket, so to go to sleep I would lay in the middle of the boat and cover myself with it. It was surprisingly warm. Anyways, I just tried to keep myself warm and make sure I didn't tip the boat for 3 days. They had boats out looking for me within 2 hours of me floating away. Eventually, they sent out helicopters. I was found after 3 days of being lost out on the open water by a helicopter. It was the scariest 3 days of my life. I apologize if this wasn't very long. I'm on mobile and it's hard to type on here. I may add on when I go on a real computer. I think there was a news report on it somewhere. I'll have to look for that. I should mention that the reason my dad was away from the boat is because he went to the truck to get gas, as the boat was out of gas. Hope that clears some things up. I'm going to bed now. I'll try to answer as many questions as possible tomorrow. Keep them coming. I just thought I should mention I was 12 years old. This was in Paine, Canada. This happened around 2.5 years ago. I'm 14 now. I was never actually missing. I was hiking and my parents hadn't heard from me in 48 hours, so they called the park rangers. Cue the search and rescue operation. They found me right where I was supposed to be. My parents are just dumb. I was never reported missing, but apparently was dang close. One day after school, I was 16 I think, I decided to go round to a girlfriend's house for a bit, and didn't come home until maybe 6 PM. My parents had been on holiday for a week, and my grandma was keeping an eye on me. She lived down the road, and was sleeping at our house at night. I arrived back home and she went ape crap at me. Apparently, as I hadn't arrived home by 4, she'd started to worry, and had rang my school, my ex. Not only had she rang my ex, she'd also gone through the phone book and rang anyone with the same surname as her to get the correct number. And she had also somehow managed to ring my head of year at home. No idea how she got that number. She was also about 10 minutes away from ringing the police as I'd been missing for over 3 hours. So due to this I had to speak to my ex. Was not happy to do that. To apologize and assure her I was alive. And also go through a long chat with my head of year regarding if I was suicidal, feeling low, needed help or anything else. Apparently the answer of I was trying to get my end away wasn't accepted. What annoyed me the most was I had a mobile phone, but instead of calling me on it, I was given a 3-month-long headache of having to deal with the fallout. Ugh. Once got lost in a shopping mall when I was 4 because I strayed from my family to follow some guy carrying a tray of popcorn samples. When I was 3 my parents lost me in Blizzard Beach at Disney World. A fat couple picked me up and dropped me at the lost and found where I sat for several hours. I literally sat on a table with people's lost crap waiting for my parents to claim me. The only reason my parents were able to claim me as their own was thankfully I knew my basic info like address, phone number, parents' names act. If they were unable to obtain this info from me, confirm they were my real parents, they were going to turn me over to the police when the park closed. I cannot stop laughing at the image of a little kid just sitting in the lost and found bin. My parents once lost me when I was 6 months old. They started to freak out and cry and all of that crap. Turns out they left in the supermarket in a random aisle. Took them 30 minutes and driving back home to figure out that oh crap, we left that little bastard back at the mart. True story. When I was really young, my brother and sister were at school and my mom at a PTO meeting. I was by her side and I thought it'd be funny to go play a game of hide and go seek. I sprinted through the middle of a street, got honked at by 3 school buses, and I ran all the way to her car. I hide in the trunk of her car and fall asleep. I wake up to screaming. I looked up and see my mother, makeup streaming down her face, screaming at me. I was asleep for 5 hours, the police had been called, and the kids at school missed half a period because they were all told to come look for me. The loudspeaker was constantly blaring with insanity. I come out. It isn't funny. I still get crap about that from my family. Well, when I was 15 I got irrationally mad over my living situation, and I just took off. I started walking at 3 AM and did not stop till I got to the next town over. From there I hitched rides, met some interesting people. This could have been a very bad idea, but anyone who picked me up seemed to be concerned for my well-being. I made it to the lower end of Vermont and slept around for a couple weeks. My parents had filed a few police reports, but I generally hid around in the libraries and parks. I got found because I had no cash and attempted to steal a bottle of water. The clerk asked why I would do that and I said I was homeless. Being that young I was told to just take it, but they called the police, and my description matched, so I was found, brought home. Once when I was in 1st grade, it was my first time taking the bus, but the only problem was I forgot where my bus stop was, so I just waited until I was the last on there and asked the bus driver if he can take me back to the school. He kicked me out of the bus and was lost in the streets walking alone what felt like 4 hours, and I started to cry when I realized I truly was lost. My parents eventually called the police and were freaking out, so about 2 hours later the police found and I was reunited with my family. TLDR. Never trust bus drivers. I suppose I was missing for the better part of an evening about 9 years ago. I was driving back to college with a friend. I believe we were coming back from the beach. We got back into town and my phone had died, but we just went straight to stopping in and saying hi to a few people. Since I never called my mom, she started worrying. She called my friend's mom, who tried to call us, but couldn't reach us. I finally made my way back to my apartment and a police squad car pulls up behind me as I parked. I got out. The officer got out. She walks up to me and the first words out of her mouth are, "You need to call your mother." I will admit, I'm still really bad at calling when I get to my destination. Remembering to call someone who had nothing to do with the trip is just not a logical part of the flow for me. I'm sorry, family. Similar thing happened with my stepbrother. A little more intense though. He was in China during that earthquake a few years back. She couldn't get in touch with him, so she called her congressman, who called the embassy. He was volunteering, so that's where they found him and essentially were like, "You gotta call your mom." He was very embarrassed. First of all, my ex-boyfriend was a lying, abusive, conniving son of a b. That said, he convinced me that my father was going to kill him. Probably not true, but definitely kick him out of their house. He convinced me that the only logical thing to do was to pawn my musical instruments and hop on a Greyhound to Cleveland, of all places. He made me turn off my cell phone, lest we be tracked, and we left during the middle of the day. One overnight bus ride to Cleveland, and a night in a cheap but efficiency hotel room, and he thought we should go back. So back to CT we went. He called his mom when we got close, and she met us at the bus station and brought me to my parents in a grocery store parking lot. There were cops there, as he had told her that my dad had threatened to shoot him. The cops didn't buy it, thankfully, and separated us, and asked me for the whole story. I showed them the bruises, and finally told them and my parents the heck I'd gone through in the past few months. I still wouldn't have him arrested for anything, kidnapping or otherwise. I swear he had me under control even then. The cops, my parents, and his Agreed not to file charges as long as we agreed to never contact another again. My grandfather came to live with us shortly after, partially for psych help, partially for a babysitter. Props to Gramps helping you out. Life after dealing with a manipulative person can be tough. Despite the hard times you endured with him, you have to adapt to things that aren't so routine. Hope you are doing well now. I'll go ahead and tell my story because not a lot of people get to. I was 3 years old when I ventured out of the apartment complex my parents were staying in. My intent was to find my mother, who was actually in the bathroom cleaning my sister's bloody nose, which was my fault. But my brain didn't get the concept that different doors led to different places, so I booked out the first door I saw and could open apparently. This led me outside and I continued to parking lot, thinking that if mom was out here, she would be in her van. I remember seeing someone stopped in the parking lot and another person outside of a car talking to someone in the passenger seat, not mom. So the search continues. Here I am, little ol' me, getting lost in between cars looking for the right van so I can find my mother. I'm probably only out there for a couple minutes, but soon I see a person walking towards me, obviously concerned as to why a little girl is outside by herself. He asks me what I'm doing. I tell him I'm looking for my mom, in which he responds, I know where she's at. Let me take you to her. I'm freaking stoked. So he takes me to his car, puts me in the passenger seat, and off we go. No, I didn't think he was weird. And no, I had no idea I was in any kind of danger. Even when, and this gets kind of graphic, he was shoving his tongue in my mouth while driving. I did not think I was in harm because he was taking me to my mom. So even when he crashed into a ditch for failing to pay attention to the road, I was then excited that I got to ride in a cop car. And then my night was made because mom. Finally, I actually got to hear my mother's side of the story a couple years ago and it's absolutely tearworthy. Come to find out I was gone for 5 minutes, and mom doesn't see me in the front room. Asks dad where the frick I am and he says dunno. He's a great dad, don't worry. So she automatically goes into freak out mode and looks for me outside, asking neighbors if they saw me, and of course calling the police. A couple of hours go by. I'm still missing. My mom gets a phone call from an officer who was at the scene of the accident. Tells her I match the description she gave them. Apparently someone saw him crash and called the popos. Jesus Christ, you are a lucky person. Buy a lottery ticket every year on the anniversary of that day or something. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.